the UltraCycling magazine show.
Well, hello, it's Lee Kreider here. As you can see, I am by myself. Jim Lawyer got called into work at the last minute. Joanna Sharp's supposed to be here with me, but where are you at, Joanna? Joanna. I don't know if I can yell as far as New Zealand or not, but hopefully she'll show up before too long. Well, you're stuck with me, and you know it always doesn't go smooth when I'm here because I got to think what I'm doing and push buttons, and you know how that works. But we're glad to have all of you here with the UltraCycling show once again, and we want to always say that we're here because of the time stations here in Ohio. The Race Across America time stations, 41 in Oxford. My video is cranky. 42 in Gloucester and 43 in Chillicothe. I wonder what is going on with my video. It must be something. Anyhow, and then, of course, Mike Minium puts out the route signs along here. And you can get one of those signs at any of our time stations for $10. Helps Mike put a sign out on the road. And we want to make sure that all of you follow us on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, please subscribe. And when you're at YouTube there, ring that bell. And bless her little heart, here is Joanna. Hi, I was just about to dock your pay, Joanna.
Sorry, it's right in the middle of a work day here, and I was on a call with a client. Sorry about that.
Well, okay, but why don't you turn your phone horizontal?
Sure.
There we go. You look so much better that way.
Go like that. How's that look?
Jim's not with us, Joanna. He got called into work. And so I'm struggling as best I can. Jim, we're here. He'd be reporting on the Race Across the East. We're going to be talking about Race Across the East in a little bit. I see that someone else has enrolled, and now up to 27 people. I don't know how many teams that recognize, but I think they're very happy with that number. And starting here in Blanchester, Ohio, and going all the way to Atlantic City this year. Also, we want to make sure that you post your questions. I'll try to catch them over here as best I can. Your comments and questions on either Facebook or YouTube. And if you don't have a comment or question, just click on there and say, I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma, or Auckland, New Zealand, or wherever Joanna's at. Let us know where you're at.
I think there are no Americans in America at the moment. They're all here in New Zealand having a great holiday. I've met so many of your countrymen in the last few weeks, Lee.
Okay, I'm going to boost your mic just a little bit, Joanna. Hang on here. I think. We'll see how that works. Okay, so the registration, like all the things we're talking about, is on the show notes for this show, and you'll find them at our website, ucm.bike, ucm.bike. Pretty easy one to remember. Calvin's Challenge has picked up another registration since we talked last week. They're up to 12. I talked with Larry Oslin this week. He realizes that he got that started very late, and he doesn't expect a huge registration this year, but he wants to just get it going and get it in people's calendars for the next years. I don't have anything on Sebring. On the Coal Country Roubaix, we have, let's see, they're up to 52 registrants at the Coal Country Roubaix. We're very happy about that. And we do have a message here from someone who has signed up for Calvin's Challenge.
All right. Hi, my name's Alex Bachman. I am from Dayton, Ohio. So I am actually a former RBA for Ohio Randonneurs. If you don't know what that is the guy who organizes all of the little brevets, which are RUSA events, long distance cycling events, 200 kilometers to 1,200 kilometers. When I started doing this, I met Larry Graham, who's one of the organizers of Calvin's Challenge, and he and a bunch of other Ohio Randonneurs were always going to Calvin's Challenge. It was kind of like a staple for the Ohio area. This year in particular, one of my goals was a 24-hour race. I was looking at going out to North Carolina for the Psycho 48, but all of a sudden was talking to Larry Graham a couple months before it was announced, and he said that they're doing Calvin's Challenge again. And I think I was signed up within about 5 minutes of his comment. I mean, it's just, I've always wanted to get a 24-hour done. It's just money and time and things have not lined up, and this was just the perfect opportunity. Please join me for Calvin's Challenge.
I did. My cough button didn't uncough. Thank you. Well, thank you for that, and we hope that Calvin Challenge becomes a growing thing here in Ohio. I want to remind you, Lam Do had just finished up his tour of Vietnam, and we've been posting that regularly on Facebook and YouTube. That's been a great thing as he has toured his homeland. I think probably he thinks of the United States as his homeland now, but it's his land of birth, and that's been great. And Joanna, I saw that Grinny was the first Indian, was she, to finish the Roubaix there in the Randonneur there in Thailand?
I know, what a wonderful event for her. And she finished feeling so strong, which made me really happy because I know she was a little bit apprehensive. But Grinny's just come on in leaps and bounds in the last 24 months.
Hasn't she, though?
So she really enjoyed herself as well, I think. And for anybody else thinking of doing it in the future, which certainly is me as well now, having watched her adventure, she said the food was a fabulous aspect of the brevet. So it's a good reason for us all to think about a trip to Thailand.
Yes, 2,024 miles, I believe it was. And I think that she'd say she had about 600 riders.
Yeah, 2,024 kilometers. I don't know what that is in your guys' money, but a long way.
Well, if you're an American, 600. Just figure it out. You know?
And about 600 riders, yeah. And I think they all had a wonderful time. Real mix. It looks like it was quite challenging in large parts. So a real achievement to get that done. Well done to everybody who took that on.
Yeah, so we're glad for her. Hopefully we'll hear from her. Now, next week, we're going to have Matthew Downey and Harry Johnson on from United Kingdom. They set a record circumnavigating Scotland, and they're going to do the VIA self-supported race this July, I believe, where they follow the Hannibal route, starting in Spain. You know, they talk about Hannibal crossing the Alps. He also crossed the Pyrenees on his way to Rome with his elephants. And they're going to follow the Hannibal route. It's one of those races, Joanna, where you just have gateways and you choose your own route.
Oh, wow. How exciting. I can't wait to hear about that from them.
Well, you know, that's the way Transcontinental works. When you had Christoph Strasser on earlier, he was talking about he went for the flat, longer ways rather than the shorter mountain routes. And you have those options, but you have certain gateways you have to go through. And then they have what they call parcours. They'll have a stretch of roadway that you have to follow. And I was just looking at their website today, and it looks quite interesting and quite challenging. that's going to be a self-supported race, and they're doing it as a 2-person team. So
wow.
it isn't going to be a relay, obviously, so it's self-supported, but they can draft off one another. So we'll be
That
talking
sounds
to
as if
them
it'll be
next week. It'll
challenging.
be at 3 p.m. our time. Joanna, that'd be 9 a.m. your time. Would that work for you?
Perfect. Sounds wonderful.
9 a.m. Monday. Okay, well, we may have to hire you here sooner or later, but
It makes a nice break from my work day. It's wonderful
okay,
hearing
great.
about all
Well,
these
we love
adventures.
having you here, and so enough of this silliness. Let's get on to talking to Ginger. Ginger Howell, who happens to be in California, Joanna, rather than Massachusetts.
Hey,
How are you, Ginger?
Finally we meet.
Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, I guess 2020 we raced vRAW together, which was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I remember you did an amazing job at that race, and it's great to virtually see you, even though I'm in California and you're in New Zealand. So
I know, it's so good to meet you. I have to say though, just between us, Ginger, have you even recovered? Everybody I speak to that took on vRAW that year, I feel like it's like traumatic stress still sits within our brains. The enormity of sitting on that indoor trainer for all that time. Is it still fresh in your mind?
It's, it is kind of fresh in my mind still. And I mean, there's certain things like I'm in the San Francisco area right now, and I remember the last virtual stage was across the Golden Gate Bridge, and I'm gonna think about that race every time I see the Golden Gate Bridge, probably for the rest of my life. I mean, vRAW doesn't actually end at the Golden Gate Bridge, but it did in 2020 because they could put the stages wherever they wanted. But I mean, it also is. It's not the worst thing to have it kind of etched in my mind, because I was telling Lee a few minutes ago, every time I've done an Ironman since then, I've called on that experience when the going gets tough in the last few miles. And I mean, if there's anything that makes a 140.6 race seem manageable, it's doing a 930-mile race. So
you're not wrong, Ginger. There's been many a time myself I've thought, it could be worse. I could be sitting in my little pain cave looking at that screen. But the thing that got me was how Lee here was like, "Oh, Joe, we should just have a chat towards the end." I'm like, "Mate, you have no idea what we have all been going through for the last 3 days."
That's such an interesting thing you brought up, Joanna, because before then, I had always been scared of doing shows live. And I don't know, I just, and my friend who does the Laid Back Bike Report kept saying, "Oh, Lee, just embrace the chaos." And so I had you on as a recording, and I said, "Joanna, would you be willing to," I think we did the finish, didn't we? I think we finished it live.
We did.
And I thought, this isn't half bad. And so
you don't know what went on behind the scenes, Lee, to make myself look even remotely human. I don't know about you, Ginger, but I was a hot mess come the end. There was like, my partner was there trying to kind of like smarten my hair up a bit and like wash my face a bit, because I just looked like such a disaster. I don't know how you were when you finished, but it was a long recovery after that one for me.
I was definitely a disaster. I mean, I didn't even know like what was going on for some of the last 24 hours. I mean, it took me 94 hours to finish. And I guess I had just read, I was telling Lee, I just read the book Hell on Two Wheels. I was reading about how riders hallucinate, and I didn't hallucinate during that race, but I was going down that road and my mind was putting information together in ways that were not accurate. I mean, I remember thinking, like I was starting to the first 3 nights. I mean, it was rough, especially that third night, but I kind of knew what was going on. And the fourth night, I was thinking, okay, this race takes 3 days and 3 nights. This is the last night. Therefore, this is the third night. It was actually the fourth night, and I was 24 hours off schedule, but there were times when I didn't quite figure that out. And I signed up for it on very short notice. I hadn't I mean, my roommate was kind of there, but I mean, I hadn't really asked for like help or anything, and so I didn't really have a crew there, and so I was just kind of on my own, and I was like, my mind was not where it should have been. So I remember I actually like slept on a yoga mat next to my bike during the like couple of hours I slept every night. And the first 3 nights, like I would have gotten up and gotten back on my bike when I needed to. The 4th night, if I had gone upstairs to bed, I would have hit the snooze button and not had any clue that I was still doing a race. I mean, that 4th night when my alarm went off after 2 hours or 90 minutes, whatever it was, I remember I woke up and I was like, why am I lying here on the basement floor next to my bike? What's going on? Here? And it took me quite a while to sort it out. And I eventually did remember that I was doing great. I eventually got back on my bike and kept pedaling, but it's like, okay, well,
You've had really good practice then at getting ready for Race Across the East. That's for sure. The sleep deprivation, you're going to have that down pat now, I feel.
I just hope Race Across the East should hopefully take less than 94 hours. So
what do you think? Because you've done a lot of virtual riding and you've done a lot of Ironman and stuff. What do you anticipate? I mean, I've never taken on Race Across the East, but having done many more in real life challenges than I have done virtual challenges, I see there being huge differences. And I'm just wondering, what are you anticipating the differences being from a multi-day virtual event to a multi-day in real life event?
Well, I need to figure out I need to figure out my directions because I'm really bad at I'm really likely to make wrong turns. So I need to figure out how to like download those maps on my Garmin, get the route book learned, and like follow the route. And I guess I mean there's a lot of stuff to just figure out in terms of, I mean, I'll need to figure out like probably which bike
I've lost your sound.
I can't hear Ginger.
It looks like you're muted, and I don't think I can't unmute you.
Hear me now?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, you're back, Ginger.
I don't know what happened there. I don't know why it muted.
That's okay. Carry on.
I was just saying, I guess I'll need to figure out nutrition and like, well, so in vRAW, I just had a table set up beside my bike in the basement, and I had all my food set up on it, and I could make a trip upstairs to the refrigerator. But I'll need to like kind of get more practice eating on the bike and that sort of thing.
Do you think that's going to differ from your Ironman, Ginger? Because I guess normally your bike, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but so far your on-bike experience is during Ironman. But I imagine that's be really hard because you're coming off a swim and then you're going into a run. So how are you thinking nutrition's going to work for you when you're just on the bike? Is that going to be different?
In some ways yes and no. In some ways I take a rather UltraCycling approach to Ironman nutrition compared to some athletes. I mean, the majority of Ironman athletes tend to fuel themselves with like sports drinks and gels and that sort of thing. And I've always been more towards the end of the spectrum of wanting real food when I race than the average person. And I sometimes feel like that makes me weird in Ironman racing, and it's more accepted in UltraCycling. I'm lucky in that I have a fairly like non-sensitive stomach, and I can get away. I mean, if I'm out for a 20-mile run, I can stop at mile 10, eat a sandwich, and continue my run. And a lot of runners can't do that. That's not like something that I do frequently, but I can do it, and it won't cause me GI issues the way it does for a lot of people. So I'm fairly lucky in that sense. But I feel like a lot of the things that I do in Ironman also tend going by feel more than going by a power meter. In Ironman, you're supposed to look at your Garmin and like, okay, I'm going to hold exactly this number of watts. And I prefer prefer going by feel a bit more, and I feel like I do better that way. And I mean, I'll of course record it with a power meter and look at my power data and get useful things from that afterwards. But I feel like there are a lot of ways in which I do things that are a bit non-traditional in Ironman that are more like considered acceptable in UltraCycling, the going by feel, the eating solid food, that sort of thing. But I mean, that said, obviously there will be some experimenting involved in like doing it over 600 miles instead of 140 miles.
Yeah, I guess that's a lot of good learnings from Ironman, but there's going to be a lot of really big differences.
Yeah.
And have you sort of taken a bit of a step back from Ironman and changed your training in any way in order to get more prepared in a traditional UltraCycle race way, or have you stuck with what you know? What's been your approach to that?
I'm still kind of figuring that out. I'm definitely, I'm probably not going to I was originally thinking of doing an Ironman this spring, and then I decided, I think I've got my hands pretty full with this right now. Race Across the East is definitely my focus, and I expect to do an Ironman later this year, maybe sometime late summer or fall. But I think that throwing an Ironman in like April or May would just be too many things I was trying to deal with at once. So I'm definitely focusing primarily on the bike right now and doing some swimming and running. But trying to get a lot of mileage in. I used to commute everywhere on my bike for several years before I had a car. And which is actually, I feel like that's a really good way to get like fit on the bike and just find more time to get training in if I take out all the hours I would otherwise be driving places.
Yeah.
I haven't done that in the last like several years, but I've been getting back into that. It makes use of the fact that I'm always running late for stuff, because it means I get speed work and trying to be on time. And I got a gravel bike for commuting, so I figured I'm gonna have to ride at night. I'm gonna have to ride in bad weather. I might as well start practicing those things. It'd be great if we have perfect weather for the whole however long it takes, but we probably won't. So I'm trying to kind of get used to riding in whatever Mother Nature throws at me.
Yeah, that's quite a big difference too, because I guess when you're doing an Ironman on the bike leg anyway, it's quite a short duration. So I'm imagining that what you start with is very often a sort of consistent theme for the race. Whereas with Race Across the East, you're going to hit multiple weather patterns and multiple terrain differences. So have you sort of done anything particular to try and prepare yourself for that change, the terrain aspect?
I've been working on climbing a lot. Climbing's always kind of been my thing. We have to do plenty of that in the basement too. We'll be going through the Appalachians, and I guess in some ways, for me, flat races have always presented almost more of a challenge, just because going up a hill is very hard going up a mountain is very hard in its own way. But when you're on the flats and you have to hold the aero position, I've always honestly been more comfortable and done better on a road bike than on a TT bike. And long flat stretches are where I really need to be on my TT bike and the aero bars for however many hours the road is flat. And in terms of, I'll be going faster on those stretches, but in terms of my strengths and weaknesses, being in the aero bars on flats for hours is kind of my weakness. And that's something that I need to train for, regardless of whether I'm doing Race Across the East or doing Ironman. But yeah, I'm trying to kind of train for both of those aspects.
Yeah, where you live, is the terrain where you live gives you mixed options. Some people, I feel like here in New Zealand, for example, it's pretty much all hills. I have to drive to get to a flat place to ride. And I feel like in America, when we speak to people on the show, some people's terrain, it's like the entire district is flat or the entire district is really hilly. Do you have the benefit of having a bit of a mixture in real life, or do you have to really seek out that?
We have a bit of a mixture. I mean, we definitely have flats. We definitely have hills. I mean, you have to go a little ways if you want to get to a real mountain. But I mean, we have, if you want to do a long ride, which obviously I do, then you can, you can get there. So I do a mix of things.
So you work as well full time, I think. Is that right?
I do. I teach swim lessons. I'm self-employed, and I can plan my work schedule around my race schedule to some extent, which is really nice. But I work one-on-one with people. I actually taught group lessons for years. Was at Charles River Aquatics, and before that, I was at the Boston Sports Club. But I actually do lane rentals at a pool now, that Atkinson Pool in Sudbury. And I work with kids and adults. I do some triathlon coaching, but mostly swim lessons. And I really like working one-on-one with people, just because everybody comes from kind of a different background. They have their own strengths and weaknesses, and you can kind of tune into what each person needs in a way that you can't if you have 5 different people in a class.
Yeah, true. That must be really motivating for them too. And I'm sort of having you work with them and considering what you're taking on. But I was kind of wondering how you're finding it, fitting in the training for something that's like obviously multi-day versus a typical Ironman. Have you found it's been quite a pressure working full-time and training, or are you fitting it in well with each other?
I feel like teaching swim lessons actually works pretty well with it, just because it's related enough that a number of the people that I work with, swimming is another endurance sport, so people kind of appreciate endurance sports, or a lot of them either bike or know someone who's into that or that sort of thing. It's actually really nice to have when you're going to the pool, like, their locker rooms, you can take a shower. So it's totally fine to show up in like cycling clothes that might be a bit wet or muddy or whatever. And you can like go in the locker room and take a shower, and everybody else has to go in the locker room and take a shower too. If I had to show up at an office and look presentable and wear a business suit or something, that would be a lot harder. But that is one of the reasons why I've been bike commuting, just because it would be, actually, over the last couple of years, I was like really struggling with getting enough mileage in while trying to work a lot of hours. And then I realized, how many hours do I spend a week driving to and from like pools to teach lessons? It's a lot. Let's take out all those hours on the bike instead. And that's actually made a big difference in my ability to fit things in. So
that's a really good way of integrating it. And I love that you've shared that, Ginger, because I think sometimes, Lee, we've been spending quite a lot of time over the last maybe 8 months really trying to encourage people to make a start into ultra distance cycling, and be that through brevet riding or shorter distance events, or just finding an entry rate. And I think that maybe one of the roadblocks that people see is, oh goodness, the training is going to take over my life, and how am I going to fit that all in? But you're kind of showing a really cool way of incorporating it into your everyday life, commuting to work, commuting home, and giving you experience of the weather. I think that's fabulous. You've shared that with us. Thanks, Ginger.
And Sherry Brick out there in Kansas is wishing you an amazing race, Ginger. Unfortunately, you won't have a lot of use for your time trial bike, I don't think, on the race across the East. You might be there in Kansas where Jerry is. But,
okay, well, that's in some ways I'm happier on my road bike anyway. So if I just get to go up and down.
There's not a lot of straight, flat sections between Blanchester, Ohio. You might run into a little bit after you get over into eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey, but it's going to be pretty rugged. I'll just
bring my road bike and leave my TT bike at home and save some money. And hope
have you ever ridden in West Virginia, Ginger?
I have not ever ridden in West Virginia, so this will be a first.
I think that's the best way, Ginger. Do you know what I reckon? And it's like, even going back to when we first met in 2020, if you know what you're letting yourself in for, I think half the time you wouldn't do a thing, because you can foresee so many challenges and problems. And from my limited experience, the things to worry about are the things I don't know to worry about, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, you can fixate on the fact of, oh my goodness, is it, this climate is going to be like this, or all these problems that you think you might have. But then the problem that's going to hit you is, I don't know, when your derailleur decides to stop working, or it's going to be something you've never thought about. So
Yeah,
I think
that's so
going
true.
into it just with excitement and enthusiasm and, a desire to do something different and challenge yourself is such a good attitude, because you're likely to find joy in things that others may not, and you're possibly not going to overthink things that maybe some people might. I don't know.
This is your first ultra, isn't it, Ginger?
First real ultra out on the road, yes.
Okay.
What are you
Well, it's a
most
big
looking
step.
forward to?
I'm looking, I guess I'm just looking forward to kind of seeing what like the experience and I mean, like doing it out on the road, seeing what I can do. I mean, I've always been an endurance athlete more than like I've always been very much at the endurance end of the spectrum as opposed to the sprint speed end of the spectrum. And I mean, I feel like I'm lucky that that's actually A, what I'm most interested in, and B, what I'm naturally best at. I mean, there's some people where they want to do one thing, and there's another thing that's like what comes most naturally to them. And the extremely long distances are both where what I naturally do best and what I naturally want to do. And I've gradually recognized that I'm lucky that they both go together like that. But I mean, vRAW was the most challenging and insanely difficult and rewarding thing I've ever done. And ever since then, I've kind of wanted to try it out on the actual road and just see what it was like to put it all together. Because there were a lot of, there were in some ways things that were harder about it. Like they added extra elevation gain compared to what we would normally have on the road. They took out all the downhill segments. But we didn't have heat, cold, altitude, wind, potholes, crazy drivers, wrong turns, like any of that stuff to worry about. And I've often wondered, well, how would I have done if it had actually been the real race, and if I had to get through all of those things. And I've known ever since then that I wanted to try it in real life sometime, but it's a huge project to take on. And when I saw that there was going to be a race across the East this year, I thought, no, that is a perfect way to get into that. Cause it's, even though Ohio isn't exactly next door to Boston, it's drivable in a way that the Oceanside start isn't. So it's logistically more manageable, and it seems like a perfect stepping stone to do Race Across the West. So I want to do Race Across the East this year, and then I'd like to do Race Across the West sometime in the next few years, and then possibly get into RAM at some point. But the RAM really very, very much intrigues me, and it also scares the heck out of me. So I will make a decision about that after I do Race Across the East and eventually Race Across the West. But it's definitely something that's been in my mind and intriguing me for quite a while.
That's so cool. Lee, I feel like I keep cutting you off. You better ask your question.
Oh, no.
Otherwise, I'll just keep asking.
No, I like it better when I don't have to talk.
I was kind of thinking about too, from your perspective, putting myself back in, I guess, the shoes that you're in right now, when I did RAW with you, and then it was a few months later I did my first on-road ultra. The idea of planning it and what am I going to take? What kit do I need? When we were sitting in our basement, my biggest issue was the dry heat, getting a blood nose, everything overheating, the dryness of the air, it was one set of climatic conditions. Mm-hmm. Do you think you've had to put quite a bit of thought into right, what am I going to need kit wise? What am I going to need to take? That's a big extra element that we obviously didn't have to contend with in 2020. Have you found it logistically, just from the conceptual, what am I going to get organized? Has that been quite a thing you've had to kind of spend time on, or has that come quite naturally just because you've had it in your mind for so long?
It is something that I've been thinking about and need to do some more figuring out with. When we did vRAW, I actually did. I had the luxury of having a table beside my bike in the basement that had all this food on it. But I was trying to kind of plan my nutrition so that it would be as close to my normal daily diet as possible. So I usually have overnight oats for breakfast. So I made myself I think it was 3 bowls of overnight oats, 1 for each morning that I thought I was going to be there. And then I had
bonus night.
Yeah. And then I had some burritos and sandwiches and stuff, and of course all the bars and stuff. When I was shopping, I got a bag of chocolate covered pretzels. That was my only impulse purchase. That wasn't on the list of things that I had written down before I went to the grocery store. That was actually what I went through first, because I was just like, oh, these are great. So definitely want some more chocolate covered pretzels. But I thought it was going to take 3 days and 3 nights. And I did actually, if I do say this, a shockingly good job of meal prepping for the first 3 days and 3 nights. The problem is that it took more than that. It took a 4th day, and then I ran out of food. And so I ate my roommate's entire box of ice cream sandwiches. And one time I went upstairs to the kitchen with the idea that I was going to make a peanut butter and jam sandwich, but making a sandwich, I'd gone maybe 850 miles at that point. Making a peanut butter sandwich took way more work than I could manage. So I went back downstairs with a jar of jam and a spoon, and I just literally ate whatever I could find in the kitchen at that point.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Lyle Wilcox, when she was doing, I think it was the Intercontinental Divide, from reading her book, this is, I believe that she lived almost entirely on jars of peanut butter. I'm going to ask her that when she comes to New Zealand as part of her trip around the world. I'm really hoping I'm going to meet her, and I want to ask her if that was actually the deal, because I can't imagine anything worse than eating just jars of peanut butter. But
you just need to get a jar of jam, stir them together, and get a spoon.
I mean, you did it, so it worked for you, right?
Emergency food supplies. But no, I guess one thing I learned from that was that, it is kind of, I do still kind of like the concept of having food along that is in my everyday diet, and trying to some extent pair it up with what times of day I would usually eat things. Of course, that add in a lot of bars and gels and stuff, but I don't think I could get through a race like that on just liquids and sports drinks and stuff. I know that a lot of people do. And if I'm biking 630 miles or 930 miles or 140 miles even, I want food.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think one takeaway from that is just do bring more than you think you need. If you think that it might take 3 days, then it's probably good to plan for 4 days. Or if I think it might take 3 days, it's probably a good idea to bring extra and plan for 3 days instead of going by the best case scenario when you're grocery shopping.
That's true. What about your sleep schedule? Because there's very different strategies that people adopt when they do RAM. And obviously with Race Across the East being so much shorter, there's again, different strategies that people would take, whether you go for naps, whether you go for a couple of 10-minute naps a day, whether you go for a sleep a day. What have you found that's working well for you?
So I'm hoping to get through, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm an idiot on this, which is very possible. I'm hoping that I can get through Race Across the East without really having to sleep. It would be one all-nighter. So we start at 8 a.m., I think, and then it would be straight through the first night, and then sometime early in that second night there should be a finish line. So I think I would say plan A is to try to get through it without any sleep. And but if I feel like I'm really fading and I'm desperate for a nap, then take one as opposed to risking a crash or something. But
I think that's really
race
good.
across the West, obviously I would need to sleep. My plan when I did race across the West virtually, if basically everything I knew about that I had read, I learned from reading Hell on Two Wheels, and it said like, oh, the top contenders sleep like 90 minutes per night. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll try that and see how it goes. I probably should have actually practiced it a little bit before the race, but I was trying to do the sleeping 90 minutes per night thing, but I kind of staggered it. So like each night it was a little bit earlier, and it was like 24 hours minus 90 minutes is 22 and a half hours, but I was going less than that without. So like, I think the first night I took my sleep break at like, I don't know, like 3 a.m. and then it was like a couple of hours earlier each night, and then that like that worked for the first 3 nights, and then the fourth night I spent quite a bit more time than that lying on the floor wondering what was going on and not remembering that I was doing a race.
I hate to interrupt you girls, but
you're going to.
You know, it's so wonderful. And thank you, Joanna, for being here. Boy, you're a real asset. And I want to thank you, Ginger, for spending time with us, even though you're out there in California for the weekend or something. And we appreciate that a great deal. We wish you well.
Oh, so much.
Thank you.
We'll try to give you a good send-off here in Ohio.
Yeah, you'll get to meet the crew. They'll all be there to cheer you, and I'll have finished my adventure just a few days, I think, before you start. So I've now got my favourite tandem with Tina doing Race Across the West. Now I've got my favourite Race Across the East rider. I'm going to be dot watching like absolute crazy, and I'll be cheering you the whole way. So don't you hesitate to reach out with any, not that I'm an expert, but as girls, you know, any kind of questions or queries or thoughts that you want to run by me, you just give me a shout. And I really wish you all the best.
Absolutely. And I'm actually going to be crewing for a couple of my friends who are doing Race Across the West. So I'll be.
Oh, how cool.
And then I haven't figured out my logistics yet. I may be going straight from Durango to Blanchester. But I'm still figuring everything out. But yeah, I'll be, I guess I'll get a crash course in how everything works the week before. So, so I guess I'll get to.
I'd forgotten you'd mentioned that to me in communication. Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank everyone for tuning in. Jim, for goodness sakes, it's time for you to retire, but maybe not yet, huh? Thank you, Joanna, for taking a work break.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you next week, probably.
You sure will.
Okay, great.
Wonderful. Good luck.
Well, let's see if we can find Greg to get us out of here. Hey, don't go away. Stick in here. After we go off the air, we'll chat for a moment.
This is Gregory Zuber, thanking you for watching and sharing.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.